Why are we so afraid of boredom? Right? Think about it. We're less bored than our ancestors, but somehow we're so much more afraid of boredom. And this doesn't apply to everyone. When I say we, I just mean people that can relate. All right? It's all you people that are like, I don't get bored. Because there are people that don't get bored. I just asked my mother what she thinks about boredom and like what her thoughts and opinions are on boredom and avoiding boredom and all that beautiful, fun stuff. And she goes, I don't get bored. And now that I realize it, this woman is always doing something. She's at work all day. There's no way that like people don't experience boredom. I feel like it's just one of like the natural human feelings. Is it a feeling / emotion? Maybe to experience. Like there's no way we're constantly so stimulated or so focused that we're not bored. I put up a question on my Instagram story asking people for their opinions on boredom just to gain a little bit of perspective, and someone answered saying, I don't experience boredom, haven't in years. When you have a mission, less time to be bored. Basically, he's trying to say that he doesn't have the time to be bored. He's constantly doing something. People definitely experience boredom. I think everyone just experiences boredom in different magnitudes. Some people experience more boredom, some people experience less boredom, depending on their lifestyle, naturally, right? Another thought I had was, is it possible that people who don't experience boredom, or say they don't experience boredom, have this subconscious pressure on themselves, placed by themselves, to feel quote-unquote productive? Or on the other hand of that, the people who are constantly chasing excitement in life, chasing pleasure in life, even when we're on a mission, when we're trying to fulfill our purpose, as this person who answered the Instagram poll said, or as my mom said, or even someone else said that they didn't experience boredom. Is it possible that you're not honoring your own rest cycles? I still have so much life to experience, so I could be completely wrong in that, and I accept that. But this is where my mind is at right now. I think that, I don't know, it's just really hard for me to like grasp the concept that people don't experience boredom. And like, I think it's very easy for me to say that I experience boredom now, and it's easy for me to talk on this topic because within this last year, I've been living at home, I've been working, I've been kind of doing the same routine every single day, like working every single day, working towards a certain goal. And even though I've been keeping myself busy, I've definitely still experienced like that fear of boredom. Even though I might have more trouble experiencing boredom. Wait a second, hold on, I'm coming full circle. The poll I asked in my Instagram story was, what's your opinion on boredom and why do you think we're so afraid of it? And some people didn't even answer that. Is it possible that people say they don't experience boredom because they have a subconscious underlying fear of it? Which is exactly what I'm trying to answer in this episode. Why are we afraid of it? To the point that we don't even realize that we're avoiding it. I saw this quote on an article by Psychology Today. They said, we are less bored than our ancestors, but somehow more afraid of it. Which I thought was so interesting because we have these small, beautiful devices now, our phones, computers, TV, like different outlets to go to if we're bored. Our phones, portal of non-boredom. I guess the opposite of boredom would be excitement. When you're bored, you experience a feeling of monotony, no interest, lack of interest, which is like the exact opposite of excitement. Like, sure, we can get really bored easily, but we're so quick to try to solve that boredom by going on our phones, by finding some way to occupy ourselves. Like, we're so afraid of exploring boredom. We're always trying to find something to do. So why are we so afraid of boredom that we will literally do anything to avoid it? We will, I think that's also why people will go to substances at the end of a day, at the end of a long day. You know, of course, stress plays into it. Of course, mental issues play into it. Of course, dependency issues. But I think also, in order to solve boredom, we also go to these substances because it'll alter our reality. It'll take us somewhere else than where we are and make us feel a little bit different. Let's just say, hypothetically, I come home from a long day of work And so at the end of the day, if I don't have anyone I can hang out with, like, and I don't necessarily feel like doing healthy ritual routine stuff, I may or may not go to a substance to avoid boredom. Just because it's like, okay, what else am I gonna do? Like, I was working all day, being stimulated all day. Where am I gonna place that attention on now? Like, instead of giving myself like a second to just like stop and be like, okay, hi, body. Like, we're so disconnected from our bodies and the present moment when we avoid boredom, I feel like. So we kind of turn to whatever external source to fill the void of not being bored and not being with ourselves. That's another thing. It's like, I think avoiding boredom is avoiding being alone, which also kind of like stems into the fear of being alone. I thought I was excellent at handling situations on my own and like being on my own until I realized, like, no, I've never actually experienced truly being alone, because I've always had my camera, I've always had my computer, my phone, whatever, to kind of feel like I'm not the only one in the room or feel like I'm not alone. But I've come to realize that I never really experienced true loneliness. I always have something to keep me entertained, to keep me stimulated, to avoid boredom and avoid loneliness and that feeling of just being with myself and seeing what comes up in my mind and seeing what comes in my thoughts. Boredom. Why are we afraid of it? We don't want to feel alone. We want to create that sense of pleasure, continue that sense of pleasure and excitement. No one wants to willingly be bored or like just not feel neutral, you know? I mean, maybe sometimes we don't always need that stimulation, but especially in today's society, I feel like where there's stimulation everywhere, it's so easy to just not be bored. Like, we have that choice. But I think boredom can be extremely beneficial to inspiring productivity and creativity. And recently, like, the reason that I even came up with this podcast episode, like this episode idea, is because I've been kind of like dabbling with the idea of introducing more boredom into my life. I have known for so long that I'm someone who's afraid of boredom, right? You have people that are afraid of spiders, planes, heights. I'm afraid of boredom. I'm afraid that I will have to face the mundane activities of life, not feel any excitement or joy, and I'm afraid that it's gonna torture me. I'm afraid of boredom because I feel like it's just like gonna be the worst feeling in the world, and I'll do anything to avoid that feeling. But I don't think it's really that bad. Like, if you're mindful of it and if you really are intentional with your boredom, I think that it can be quite transformative for yourself. So I was doing some research about boredom because I wanted to like see if there were any psychological studies or anything on it. And one thing that came up was that there's two different kinds of people when it comes to boredom, right? So the first type of person, the adventure seekers, the people who love to chase after the thrills of life. They want to experience life. They want to see what life has to offer, and like almost like the adrenaline junkies, or the thrill seekers, adventure. I would consider myself one of those people. Like, I don't think I'm yes, I'm afraid of the feelings that may come up when I'm bored and like faced to be alone with myself and my thoughts. But I also think that I'm afraid of my boredom because I'm afraid of just feeling chronic understimulation from the world. Like, I see the world as this exciting place. I just want to experience it in its entirety, and I want to like just live life to the fullest, right? Do all these things. Like, I'm that kind of person that like I'm just gonna go out there and like get it, and I want to do it, and like I just want to do it all and experience it all for the plot and for myself and for the character growth. So I'm afraid of boredom because this is a head scratcher here. Wow, this is almost like a therapy session and podcast episode in one. I'm afraid of boredom because I'm afraid of feeling like life isn't exciting. I'm afraid of feeling like life isn't exciting, and I'm afraid of losing that like inspiration to chase life. So it's both of those things for me. But anyway, the second type of person when it comes to boredom is like the literal opposite of this, right? So they're not adventure seekers, they're not thrill seekers, but they're so afraid of the outside world that they stay in their comfort zone and create this boredom from a lack of just imagination and experience. They don't step out of their comfort zone, and as a result, they create chronic boredom for themselves. I mean, if you think about it, if you do the same thing over and over again every day, repeating the same routine, running on autopilot, you're going to get bored of that eventually. I mean, sure, like, there's such a thing as consistency, and, like, people are freaking awesome. I don't know how they do it, but they do the same thing every day, same routine. But, like, don't you get bored of that after a while? I know I would. I can't do anything for more than a month straight. But I'm working on it. I'm changing my ways. But I'm digressing here. So when you kind of run on autopilot, you're creating chronic boredom. This might work for some people. I think there are genuinely some people out there that benefit from having the same routine every single day, and maybe they don't get bored of it. Maybe it's something they thoroughly enjoy and like actually helps them. Or I could be completely wrong, and after a while, this creates that feeling of chronic boredom. And I would say that kind of boredom isn't necessarily bad either, because if you're attentive and intentional with the mundane tasks in your life, I think you can still create space for productivity and creativity in your mind. So there's not to say that one version of boredom is better or worse than the other, but I definitely think there is good boredom and there's bad boredom. Good boredom meaning boredom that inspires that creativity, productivity, and then the bad boredom. I don't like labeling things as good or bad, but I'm just trying to make a point here. And then the bad boredom where you're trying to escape it. The one thing that yoga has taught me is that there's so much value within slowing down and stillness, which is why I've been trying to explore boredom a little bit more, because I constantly feel the need to stimulate myself. I'm so afraid of not knowing what to do. I feel the need to fill up my calendar, feel the need to fill up my day so that I don't feel unproductive. But that's kind of ironic because, you know, you can have an quote unquote unproductive day, but still be productive because you create space for yourself and your mind to explore, face the boredom. Maybe, like, one thing I've been trying to do is eat my breakfast without my phone. It sounds so simple, but I know a majority of us, and probably everyone watching right now, okay, not everyone, but a majority of you watching right now, eat your breakfast with your phone, with your screen. And this might not be true for people who eat like with a family or eat with a group of friends or whatever. I mean, friends might be different. I'm so surprised at the amount of people that go on their phones when they're like with other people. I don't know if it's just me, but like that doesn't make sense to me. Like if you're with other people, that's an opportunity to not be bored. And even if I am bored, I'm bored with other people, you know? I don't know. I just think it's kind of like dumb to be on your phone with other people around. But anyway, I'm digressing. So let's say you're eating breakfast alone, right? This doesn't apply to scenarios where you might be spending time with other people. But if you're eating breakfast alone, a majority of the time, you're probably going to be scrolling on your phone to occupy your mind while you're eating. Because eating is a boring task. We know how to eat so well, the simple movement of shoveling food into our mouths, that it's boring, right? It's not an exciting task. I mean, maybe if the food tastes good, it's exciting and we can put all of our intention into it. But in our daily, day-to-day lives, where we're just fueling our bodies, you know, keeping ourselves running and alive, eating is boring. There's nothing exciting about it, unless maybe the food tastes good. Maybe you prepared it for yourself and you're excited to eat it. But I'm saying, just in a general sense, where we're fueling our bodies, just keeping ourselves alive, and just doing that daily function of needing to eat, it's a boring task. It's the mundane task of life that we need to do. And we're so afraid and so avoidant of that boredom. We scroll on our phones. to just get it over with. But recently I've been trying to observe how I feel and like what comes up in my mind, like if I were to eat like without my phone. And that's just like a general practice you can do for more mindful eating, or just it's a general mindfulness practice. But on the topic of boredom, I've noticed like I'm eating and I'm like, okay, like here we go, another bite. Like I'm trying to find things to look at around me, like trying to just like think of things to think about. And I'm like, okay. And then I start looking at my food and I like observe the colors or the smell. And then maybe I'm like, I wonder how many times I can chew this. And it's like so interesting. It's almost like boredom becomes curiosity. So I think that's also another beautiful thing, and like where boredom can actually be very beneficial is when you become aware of your boredom and it turns into curiosity. And I think when it turns into curiosity, that's when the creativity blooms. And boredom doesn't always necessarily have to equal creativity, or doesn't necessarily always have to have an outcome of creativity or productivity or whatever. Boredom can just be a simple learning experience about yourself, a certain observance about the way you are or whatever. Boredom is the biggest mindfulness practice you can ever have, because you're literally just sitting there with yourself, doing the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be you sitting in front of a wall watching paint dry, doing nothing. Boredom can be while doing things. Boredom has the potential to become curiosity. And that's where the creativity blooms. But it's not necessary. But I just think it's important to state that boredom can be beneficial, and we shouldn't be so afraid of it, because it has the potential to blossom into something beautiful for ourselves. We can become amazing innovators. We can come up with amazing ideas from boredom. I mean, think about it. Like sure, all of the greatest philosophers, mathematicians, it was a different time back then, and maybe they did have some special superpower where they were really smart. But I also think that they had more time to explore, and they were definitely more bored because they didn't have as much stimulation as we do now, which could have led them to explore and let their curious minds wander. And that's where they came up with all their amazing ideas, just from simply observing their surroundings, their thoughts while they were bored. Okay, I experience boredom a lot when I go on walks. I was thinking about this too on my last walk I went like a few days ago, or yesterday, I don't know. And I had my headphones in, and I was like, I always go on a walk with my headphones in. And I'm walking, but I'm not really present with my walking. Like, I'm listening to a podcast, music, whatever, and I'm just doing it to do it, because I don't want to be bored on my walk. And I was thinking, like, what would happen if next time on my walk, I left my phone at home, no headphones, nothing, and just went on a walk? Like, what would happen? Would I get bored? Maybe. But maybe my eyes would be a little bit more open to the world around me, and I would create this new sense of presence. Like that phrase, like, stop and smell the flowers. Like, with my headphones in, I might like completely disconnect from the world that I'm in and not even notice the flowers on the sidewalk in the first place. Explore that boredom. Take out the headphones. You're looking around, getting curious. Your boredom opens up a space in your mind for so many possibilities. And then you see the flowers and you're thinking, I wonder what they smell like. Or I want to look at them a little closer. And it's like, why not? You're bored. You might as well, right? And then, boom. Flowers. And then you might go back to being bored, but whatever. You saw some cool flowers. Like, boredom doesn't have to be this bad thing. But I just think it's so interesting, like, how afraid we are of it, or how afraid most of us are of it, and how afraid I can be of it. Like, how I will do anything to avoid boredom. Boredom and mindfulness kind of go hand in hand. Or mindfulness can help you navigate your boredom a little bit better. Help it be more bearable. Accept the mundane parts of life. Do them well and intentionally. Creating space for productivity and creativity. I wrote a bunch of times here, like, creating space for productivity, creativity, but that's not necessarily the end goal. I'm just trying to point out that there's a positive to boredom and why we shouldn't be so afraid of it. Solutions to stop being so afraid of boredom: experience the feeling of monotony more often, so like lack of interest, and not necessarily in like an I don't care kind of way, but kind of just like being bored more often. So not having your phone at meals, going for a walk without music, avoid scrolling, unproductive boredom, which honestly eventually doesn't even turn into boredom. Actually, that's not even true. I get bored from scrolling sometimes. If I do it for so long, I'm like, oh my god, I don't even want to do this anymore. Even though I'm so bored of all the apps, I'll keep scrolling because I just like really am so afraid of being bored by myself, like bored without nothing to do. Like, sure, I can be bored while scrolling on social media. I'm like, okay, like I'm not really into this anymore, but you're still being stimulated in a way that makes you forget you're bored in the first place. Like you're constantly getting this information overload that it's like, well, the boredom doesn't even matter anymore because, oh, hey, look, that happened. But I think it's so funny how like even if I'm bored of scrolling on social media, I'll still continue to do it because I'm so afraid of just sitting there and being like, what do I do with myself? I guess you could, if that ever happens, what should I do next time that happens? Sit there, stare at the wall, observe my thoughts, see what comes up, maybe go outside, go for a walk. I always try to find like solutions to my boredom. So maybe I should just sit there with it and be bored for a little bit and just like stare at the wall. I've done that before, actually. It's very rare, but sometimes I'll give in to the boredom and I'll just observe it, and it's actually very nice. It's like a meditation to bring inspiration. I like that. Few things to take from this. Why are we so afraid of being I was gonna say being alone, but I guess that kind of relates. Why are we so afraid of boredom, of being alone with our own thoughts, of certain feelings coming up, not knowing what to do with ourselves, of feeling like the world is chronically underwhelming, need for excitement in our life, not feeling productive enough, many things. Are there any solutions? Yes. Familiarizing yourself with boredom, monotony. I like that word. New vocabulary word. Monotony. I invite you to explore boredom a little bit today, this week. Maybe it can start by putting your phone away during your meals, or, like I said a million bajillion times, not going on a walk with your headphones. Like, I guess you could still bring your phone if you want to, like, know how long you've been walking or how far, if you have, like, a step goal, but, like, just not having headphones in and listening to anything. Like, that's the number one thing I notice when I walk. Like, yeah, I'm listening to it, but I'm still, like, pretty observant of what's going on around me. Because that's just the type of person I am. Like, I'm always observing. And I see everyone with headphones. And, like, once in a while, I'll see someone without headphones going for a walk. And I'm like, oh, they're fully in their walk right now. Like, sure, they're probably having an internal narrative and a whole, like, story going on in their mind. But, like, so many people just wear headphones. Like, everyone's in their own world. And I feel like it's creating this disconnection from, like, each other. And, like, obviously the phones are, like, doing that to us. Like, we're tapping into this digital world to stray away from the external world. Anyway, that's, like, I'm digressing, whole nother topic. But I hope this made sense. I think it did. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I feel like I said my 2.5 cents. I invite you to explore boredom. And if you'd like, I also invite you to share your experience on this video. Or I don't know if you can comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but if you're watching the YouTube video version of this, check out my podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I invite you to find my YouTube channel, Digital Clara. Podcast, Gaining Clarity. YouTube channel, Digital Clara. Shameless self-promo. Gotta do it to 'em. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.